Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So today's video we are gonna be talking all about Storm Pyramyd X. So I did try to get her in the early release bundles. Unfortunately I wasn't lucky to do so, but then once again we do have plenty amount of CCP footage out there, as well as some people who have gotten her from early access bundles, and we already have some videos, so I feel that it is relatively safe to draw some conclusions. And as I typically like to do with quite many of these videos, I'm going to refer to Cam's Excel sheet, where he basically kind of lists pros and cons, because I definitely agree with vast majority of his analysis for most of the time, and I like to use as basis of my own as well. So let's change the scenes and jump right here in the game. So for those of you who do not have Storm Pyramyd X yet, you are still able to browse her abilities, because it's a new cool feature that Kabam has made available for all of us. So we can simply go to in-game and we can view her info. And I'm not going to go over her all abilities and her shtick, because I already did that in her pre-release post, basically, where all abilities were listed. But the base idea is that she has two different tempests that you can switch in between with your pre-fight ability, or you can just try to activate both with your signature ability when you're below certain amount of health, or with your level 3, or when you get knocked down. The knockdown thing doesn't really work out too well typically, because in high-end fights you do not want to get knocked down, or you're gonna get knocked out. But all of that being said, the basis of character model is basically very large special attacks. Now the problem with that quite often can lie in the fact that her critical rating and her critical chance is definitely below average, and therefore unfortunately more often than not you will not see many crits. And that is one of the kind of like more annoying things about this champion model in particular, because this is a champion where these big yellow numbers would look so beautiful because they would be so big, but unfortunately due to very small crit chance, she will much more often disappoint you than deliver that big crit hit. That all being said, her special attacks can still deal a lot of damage. The problem with that though is, because her regular attacks deal hardly any damage. In comparison, she is effectively a noodlest of noodles, and has absolutely nothing to increase her damage output outside of special attacks. So any matchup where it is trickier to launch special attacks, or where opponents have some damage caps and things like that, it will be tricky, and there are a lot of those, especially if you would max her out. For instance, even bringing her in Abyss, the fact that you only rely on special damage will kind of significantly reduce the total amount of damage you are able to inflict in the given 200 something hits if you're using a maxed out 5-star. And as it turns out, her actual damage output per second, which in my opinion is the most important metric in the game, is kind of average, just because yes, she doesn't have an extra power gain, so it's not like she can spam special after special. She does not have any way to increase her basic damage. It's more or less not that she is dealing insane amount of damage with her special attack. She's kind of catching up to many other higher damage output champions with a bigger special attack number, but she's just compensating for the amount of damage that she was not able to deal with her regular hits, because those are wank as well because of her crit rate. She doesn't even crit a lot. All that being said, I definitely think she's gonna have her uses. I definitely do not think she's an awful champion, but she certainly isn't like a top contender in the game, or even in mutant class, because mutant class is so jam-packed, and if you have well-established mutant roster, there's hardly anything you're gonna particularly need this champion for. Now that all being said, obviously there are some quirky bits of utility and some things other champions don't do too well. For instance, a really cool ability that she has is how she can apply passive stun against the champions that do shrug off her regular stuns via parry, and that is super useful, especially because tenacity is becoming more and more relevant as a node. We saw it in 6.3, it made a big comeback in 6.4, we have seen it in dungeons. I have absolutely no doubt that eventually we're going to see it in AQ and AW, and she is a good tenacity counter, as well as she will provide a very easy way how to deal with masochism, for instance. For people who are progressing throughout the game, how manage to get Storm as like a 4-star, how max her out, she will be fantastic, for instance, for the first time that you encounter masochism, because masochism is one of those tricky nodes that often catches people as they are just trying to kind of develop their roster and push through to Uncollected and Cavalier. So she will certainly have her uses, but again, I think she's overall in her general ranking kind of like middle of the block character. She will have her moments to shine like many of the champions do. Hey, even Man-Thing get a moment to shine against Acid Wash Mysterio. Not that I'm trying to say that Man-Thing is a bad champion. He just isn't like insanely powerful, but there will always come circumstances when these champions stand above the majority if you have well kind of complex ability set. And that is the whole thing also why I don't particularly agree to tiering systems and tiering lists, because under right circumstances, majority of the champions can be exactly the right answer that you need, and that is exactly what Storm will be able to provide. But for your day-to-day questing, for your day-to-day abilities, she's not gonna be the one you go for. Her damage ramp up, yes, you can say she just needs to get to level 2 and I'm going to destroy some uncollected opponent. Well, there are plenty of champions who don't even need to get to that level 2. Bring in Corvus and you barely get to level 1 on Suicides. So all of those things considered, since she's not like insane get-go start of the fight, kind of like damage powerhouse, since her damage output overall is kind of like middle of the pack, and that just... I don't know, I have my fair amounts of reservations and skepticism, but now let's jump on to Cam's spreadsheet and list his pros and his cons. So the pro is very good damage on specials 2 and 3. Expect 180k special 3s with her, 565 with suicides, 120k without suicides. So that certainly is a large amount of damage, and once again, that however has its limitations, but you cannot take it away, especially in some different node combinations, even with like, let's say, Power Shield. That will be an important factor to count that her special attack is going to be very big and great. And I can already see, for instance, node like Matador working very well for Storm, because she's going to be able to gain power more rapidly if she's staying aggressive and stack up more prowesses and deal a lot of damage via her special attacks. Not hard to build up and play with no need to significantly alter her playstyle. For max output, you'll need to charge heavy once launching special attack, but charge up is very quick and specials are unblockable. So that is definitely a plus as well, that she can be picked up by anybody on day 1, and effectively you can just go and get her. You do not need to remember stuff like you do with Dr. Doom, that you need to drop a level 3, then you need to do medium, medium, light, 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 medium, medium, level 1, level 2, blah, blah, blah. She does not have any kind of specific playstyle. She doesn't have like certain special set of rules that you have to follow. Effectively, you can just hit the opponent, don't get hit, launch a special attack, and enjoy some damage. And that is certainly that makes her more attractive. Now, immune to damage from all shock effects in lightning mode, counter TMP modification, and immune to cold snap and frostbolt in ice mode. So that's always nice to have some new champions that are immune. I kind of actually like that Kabam is largely focusing on like shock, incinerate, and cold snap recently, and leaving kind of bleed and poison immunities alone, because that makes a lot of the older characters more I don't know, appropriate and more current. For instance, Dr. Voodoo is making a bit of a comeback because there are not as many poison immune characters being released currently. At the same point, Archangel, I think his stock is up as high as it is right now, just because Kabam is focusing on other immunities and leaving bleed and poison alone for large part. So that's definitely super useful. Defensive utility with strong glancing, will and tag, and awkward to dex unblockable special 2. So on defense she probably will have some use, but again there are quite few relatively easy counters. I'm just glad that she does not have flow active, as in like that she is not a control champion, which is a damage champion. But all in all, I definitely can see that she's going to get some kills in medium tier Alliance Wars. And higher end Alliance Wars though, I do not expect there to be that much trouble, because her special 1 is relatively easy to avoid with a minimum practice, and you can always bring in power control options, power lock options, and that also disables the Tempests and removes her glancing, as well as she will be food for any and all Mystic champions, because all of those prowesses are actual buffs. So all in all, I'm not too worried about her on defense. Energy damage basic hits, core counter, increased energy resistance, energy based unavoidable damage. So that again kind of like adds another dimension to her utility, because she can be used for psychic taunts and other things. So that definitely is kind of useful. I kind of like the fact that we have more variety of our basic attacks, because we have some projectile attackers now, we have more energy attacks, and more that is coming to a play. Now, do not necessarily always count that as an advantage, because there can be situations where that can be considered as con as well, but currently in game I think you're most likely gonna experience it as a pro. However, remember, if a character for instance has large energy resistance, then she's not gonna be able to deal all that much damage. So it's just one of those things that you need to be aware of. It's not inherently a massive advantage or massive disadvantage for any character, but you just need to be aware whether your champions deal with energy damage or physical damage. Now, shock damage from special 2 is increased based on an enemy's current power, and you have the ability to activate this attack without worrying about pushing most enemies to special 3 thanks to power gain. I do like that ability, because quite often you kind of pause yourself and lose the momentum in the fight. For instance, when your champion is kind of like ramped up and you're about to drop that big special attack, but you need to wait and bait out the special attack of your opponents. And there have been multiple times when that is kind of like the downfall of the entire fight, because then opponent doesn't really want to throw their special attack. Meanwhile, your effects fall off or expire, and you kind of have to start building it all up all over again. And I just absolutely love the fact that she can drop a massive special 2 without worrying pushing opponent special 3, which is something I think Original Storm also should have in her kit, because her special damage is also increased based on opponent's power. So that would only kind of be appropriate, but I digress. Obviously Storm is quite old champion and doesn't look like we're getting a rework of her, but at least this one got it right, and that is how it should be for champions like Storm, I guess. But yeah, so I'm definitely a big fan of that. It's not exactly kind of flat out plain utility, just kind of one of those little quality of life things, quirks in character design that you definitely can enjoy, and I think that is gonna play quite a cool and important role your day-to-day usage of this character. So I definitely like the fact that they did that. Special 1 inflicts a passive calls now that could potentially counter evade on debuff immune resistant matchups. So that's kind of cool, but the problem there is, especially on debuff immune matchups, you have to get your level 1s, and if you're fighting against away champions, that's going to be a hard thing to ask. So I typically like to rely on True Strike 2 accuracy or champions like Frost, Nick Fury, Night Rusher, or what have you, because they also do not rely on being able to debuff the opponent, but at the same time they have that ability kind of like in their base hits, and they have much easier time to activate it. Not to mention that you do not have to kind of like worry about getting from one special attack to another special attack, and at the very least you kind of will be forced to sacrifice some of your damage output with Storm to prevent a wade, and I'm not a big fan of that either. So it's not something that kind of like organically flows into her and something that you would want to do at all times. So yeah, it's a nice, neat thing, but at the same time, there are so many champions that do it so much better that I do not particularly place very big value on that, at least myself, but it's just like one of those nice little handy things. Not completely Suicide's unfriendly. Despite having no immunity to bleed or poison, you can play her with good success using only special 3 rotation. This helps increase her otherwise underwhelming damage per second. So that is kind of a good thing, but again, I'm not overall a big fan, I guess. I mean, I'm definitely a big fan of Suicides, but I'm not a big fan of using champions that will still relatively suffer quite a lot of damage at the beginning of every fight. I love to use Suicides, but at the same time I love to combine them with the ability to regenerate partial immunities, or just stuff like Corvus or Omega that heals with Suicides or Ghost. So flat out going in with a strategy to take damage, it definitely has its merits, and I do it as well when needed, but it can be problematic and item expensive. But at the same time, it's at least good that she does not rely on spamming massive amounts of special attacks. So even when you are running Suicides, whether you use for overall only special 3s or go for occasional special 2, that still kind of enables you to use her in shorter matchups or for purpose use, as in like you can bring her in Act 6 with Suicides, Maybe not use her for entire lane, but use her as a specialty champion for fight 2 or 3. But again, all that being said, I don't really envision in my head her being the choice of a specialty fight, kind of like, I don't know. There's something is in there that just doesn't flow as well together. Anyways, let's quickly jump to cons. Annoying pre-fight ability. I think they fixed that. I think they changed that, so once you select which mode you want to, that becomes the new default, so that's cool. Very underwhelming damage on basic hits and low crit rate, resulting in overall average to slightly below average damage output. And here is the major drop kind of like thing, and the biggest thing that people will miss, people will kind of overlook. Just because she can drop a big special attack doesn't mean her damage overall is good, because you need to get those special attacks. She does not have any power gain mechanics. She does not have any kind of like way to spam these special attacks or conserve power. And additionally, her crit rate is garbage and her basic damage is garbage. So in vast majority of the scenarios, her damage is going to be extremely subpar. And that is very, very important thing to note, because this is a champion that effectively runs on high damage number platform. And that is kind of like how she's being advertised. Let's look at these 110k something special attacks. Oh my god, look at that crit. But when you take a look at the actual valuable unit of measurement, which is time in the fight, whether it is timing out an IQ or a W, or whether it is just how long it takes to take down a Labyrinth of Legends opponent or whatever. When you take a damage output in concept of time, which is the one and most truthful and accurate kind of measurement of damage, not amount of hits, not the highest damage you can put out with the champion, it's simply how long the fight takes. She is not great, and she's running on that platform. She's not running as a versatile utility queen that will be able to do this, that, and that. Yes, there are some nice, neat niches of utility, like the stun thing, when she can place a passive stun, she can passive cold snap. So level 2, you can not push opponent to special 3, basically with your level 2, so on and so forth. But A, those are conditional depending on which Tempest you're running, or whether you're able to activate both Tempests. And B, it's not enough to make her a utility goddess, kind of like. She has some immunities, which is cool. So overall, I think when you value her utility wise, I don't think anybody is going to rank her as like A+++ champion, right? Captain America Infinity War is utility powerhouse. Ghost is utility powerhouse. Omega Red is utility powerhouse. Corvus, through sheer damage and his signature ability, can be utility powerhouse. She doesn't have anything that makes her in that list, in that category. Additionally, the thing that she's supposed to have is damage, and it's underwhelming. So unfortunately, that does not make her a fantastic champion or a great champion design. Obviously, she looks awesome, her abilities are quirky, and not every champion has to be OP as fuck. But because of that, you cannot also expect me to kind of like be super hype and like, oh my god, she's god, and look at the damage and so on and so forth. No, you just need to look at things for what they are. She's an interesting champion that has some worthwhile abilities, big special attack damage, garbage damage and crit rate overall, and some nice niche side utilities that will come in handy here and there. But no, she's not going to make your roster, she's not going to be the queen of your roster, she's not going to carry you through wars or quests in Act 6. So that's where, in my opinion, she actually lands. Very low health and no effective way to increase her sustaining. The glancing and decent block prof is not enough to keep her alive. Okay, so she's not the most durable champion, but that's typically not a deal breaker, especially because she does have the block prof, and glancing just basically means don't eat too many hits to the face. That's not a great thing for a champion to be referred to as, but still, there are definitely worse examples, like Stark Enhanced Spider-Man, for instance. Buff reliant without access to her prowess buffs. Again, that is definite downside, that she relies on buffs, and those are actual buffs, so stuff like Pilfer will hurt her a lot, or any other nodes basically that nullify her matchups. At the same time, there are so many champions that do rely on having access to buffs that's just like one very large subcategory, which definitely is a downside, the fact that those are actual buffs and not passives. But it's just one of your kind of like core game situations and mechanics, just something you need to be aware of, that just because of the fact that she triggers so many buffs quite often, she will not be a viable option for a certain path. For instance, Prey of the Week, I guess. Right, reliant on gaining power, launching specials frequently, and aggressive play. Defensive AI matchups that don't allow for regular power gain and or special activation with lower hair output. Okay, that is obviously another thing to keep in mind, because there are some champions who hardly rely on special attacks at all to distribute their damage. For instance, Aegon. Aegon doesn't really care whether you get to drop that level 2 or 3. He's going to hit hard throughout the fight. And there are many champions who basically rely only on that. Let's say Proxima Midnight. Proxima Midnight will do nothing for no one if she's not able to drop a big special attack. And this is the same case here. Obviously, it is innate weakness, but it's nothing I would judge her too harshly myself. Special 1 anti-evade and anti-unstoppable are underwhelming. It's a evade heavy matchup. You need to get special 1 with no anti-evade and keep spamming, losing most of your DPS. And the slow lasts only for the duration of special. Yeah, so again, that's kind of like, as I mentioned, it's kind of like a novelty thing. It's cool to have, it's neat, it's nice, but it's certainly not enough to kind of mark her as a good evade counter champion. No, you have far better options to do that. Don't look any further than, like, I don't know, Ghost once again, or Quake, or, I don't know, Corvus, or, yeah, Thekiryu, or, like, that's the thing, like, that is what brings all of these insanely powerful champions that kind of like dominate the metagame together. It's ease of use and reliability, and Storm just does not have that. Useless Sig ability. She's way too squishy to be played at low health, and same benefits from the Sig can be gained from activating special 3. Now, I wouldn't say special Sig ability is kind of useless, especially if you try to bring her in, like, let's say Labyrinth of Legends, or just want to pop in a revive on her, because then you basically automatically activate your Sig ability and can kind of be good. But yeah, I'm definitely not a big fan of this new direction that they're taking with Mole Man, for instance. The lower his health is, the harder he can hit, and you have to be below XXX. I have hard enough time accepting Nick Fury and Nick Fury's playstyle, because it is also kind of like risky, where you need to kill him off and then go in a fight, and then basically fight with 30% of your health. But in case of Nick Fury, at least you have that option where you can have full health, and then you get extra bonus added to it. And here you do not have like your second life, your second heal, nothing like that. So yeah, I don't think I'm a massive fan. I actually wish she had Sig ability that's more similar to Nick Fury, as in like you can go and fight, and then when she dies, she kind of gets resurrected with both Tempests and degens back to 30% or something like that. That would be so much cooler for her Sig ability, but unfortunately that's not the case. And reliant on Bishop, and to a lesser extent on Storm synergy to be viable in most endgame matchups and less stressful to play, but her synergies for Bishop or Storm are nowhere near good enough to justify bringing them along, and Pyramyd in most cases not good enough to justify 3 spots on your team. And that is another kind of like downfall of many champions who heavily rely on these synergy bonuses to be much more viable. They have to be freaking good. They have to be able to deal with anything and everything that kind of like life throws at them. For instance, Ghost, right? Okay, you can Wasp synergy, it's kind of like ease of use that you can kind of like get by with, but Hood synergy. Hood is not a meta game dominant champion, and is not a champion developed roster we typically want to bring in, but Ghost is that good to justify taking in Hood. Unfortunately, Storm is not that good. Not to mention that the other Storm and the Bishop are just not that great of a champions to begin with. So if those champions would be amazing, for instance, if those synergies would be with somebody like, I don't know, Domino and Nick Fury for whatever reason, or Domino and Dr. Doom or whatever, if those champions that synergized and made her actually kind of like relatively alright and better to play an endgame were good champions, she would be so much more valuable in my eyes. But since in this kind of situation, and let's be real here, and I'm not trying to be elitist or coming from a country club, Storm and Bishop are objectively below average. They're bad champions, and they have no business on your questing team in 6.4 or 3 or 2 or 1 outside of being a source of synergy. You do not have any kind of like objective player in this game who's trying to explore 6.3 trying to bring in Storm for anything. Except maybe this synergy, or except maybe synergy with Captain America for that pro spot. And that's it. And that kind of automatically demands and puts so much more weight on Storm, and she just doesn't measure up. So that is my overall opinion about Storm. I think she is going to do alright for newer and progressing players. I think she's, if you are currently doing Uncollected, trying to get Uncollected, or trying to push Cavalier Quest, and beginning kind of like Act 6, and yes, she's worth investing. But if you realistically look at everything that's on table, is she going to be great for Labyrinth? No. Not in particular. Is she going to be great for Abyss? Definitely not. Is she going to be great for 6.2, 3, 4? Some paths, maybe, but she's not going to be the champion that carries you through it. Is she good for Variant 1? Possibly, but Variant 1, Mutant Quest is the easiest one anyway, so typically people tend to focus on Tech, Mystic, Science, and Cosmic Champions if they want to explore Variant 1. Variant 2, no, she's not extra large champion. She doesn't have like heavier line playstyle. Variant 3, she's not a tech champion. Her damage will be gimped. Variant 4, everything goes in Variant 4 for a quest, but so basically that's like she's not gonna carry you through the quest either. She gonna carry you in AQ? Probably not. She doesn't have like a great Thing matchup. She doesn't have a great Annihilus matchup. She doesn't have a great Omega Red matchup. She can probably do the Omega Red fight, but who knows. She definitely doesn't have a great Dr. Doom matchup. So no, she's not going to be like a key factor in higher Alliance quests. She's going to be insane Alliance War Attacker. I'm willing to bet my last $100 that it's a no. She will maybe be useful for like Psychic Taunts or something, but as an essence, she's not going to be a champion that provides answers for the hardest fights or the boss fights or be a boss killing champion. So all of these things considered, I just don't value her much as a champion. She will be helpful because she has plenty of abilities for newer and progressive players, yes. For somebody who is living in that top end Act 6 variant kind of like world and top tier Alliance Wars, no. She's going to be a champion you rank up because she's fun, you get giddy, you play some defense, and then occasionally you are happy that you can whip her out. So that will conclude today's video. So hopefully I didn't keep you guys too long, but I just want to be kind of like brutally honest about my opinion and the fact that she doesn't really have anything to set her apart. She's a damage champion with subpar damage, and she's not a utility champion. She has some nice niche utilities. So Storm is definitely not a champion I'm personally overly interested in chasing. If I happen to get her, obviously I'll take her, I don't know, rank 3, or if I need her for Alliance defense, I might rank her, but she's not a champion I'm looking with watery, googly eyes, begging to kind of like carry my account, I guess. And yeah, that will pretty much do for today's video. If you did like today's video, then definitely do remember to hit that like button, hit that sub button, hit all the buttons, and if you did so, here's a Baby Yoda for you. If you do not like Baby Yoda, well then what kind of human being are you? Either way, that's me done for today, and I will catch you guys soon.